We're going to get started. First and foremost, to everyone that has joined us, not just the panelists, welcome. We truly appreciate your presence. Welcome to the Black Brilliance Excellent Unleashed webinar that Globe is hosting here. Again, we truly appreciate every single individual's presence, but we have some esteemed guests here, but I want to go over what the agenda today is going to be. So we're going to do, first and foremost, I will start with my opening remarks. Again, just letting you guys know, again, our appreciation and how much work has been done and unleashed in order to make something like this come to fruition. The individuals that we have today is going to speak as the panelists. They are highly skilled individuals that have accomplished a lot. And the reason why they're here is not just because of their accomplishments, it's because what are some of the things they're able to bring forth to us and provide us with information-wise. So we're going to have them grace us with some of their knowledge. At the same time, we're going to open the floor so you can ask any question that you do have as well. Also, at the end of the webinar, we will have an amazing speed networking. What the speed networking is going to consist of is the ability and opportunity to chat and engage with one another. We're utilizing the GlueUp platform, the GlueUp tool, just going to allow you guys to connect with one another, maybe 5 or so minutes where you can talk, chat, engage, whatever needs to be done. It's going to be an amazing moment. And again, as I stated earlier, if you know anyone that needs to join, needs to register, it's not too late. Get them to register, get them to join, and we're going to have an amazing moment. So first and foremost, I do want to establish who we have on this panel here. We have Eric Schmidt, who is the CEO and co-founder of GlueUp. Just want to make sure everyone is aware of that. Eric Schmidt's on the call here. Also, we have Marilyn Hemingway. Marilyn Hemingway is the CEO and founder president of the Gullah Geechee Chamber of Commerce. The Gullah Geechee Chamber of Commerce was founded in actually is a Georgetown, South Carolina native. She extends along the entire south coast of South Carolina. She also is not just a hard and working individual, but an advocate for environmental justice. When it comes to anything green, renewable energy, that's her. Her passion extends just a little bit much more than just a chamber side. It goes into the energy side as well, too. Her plans are to expand not just from the South Carolina to North Carolina, but all the way to Florida as well. A civic leader, an entrepreneur. She leads not just the Gullah Geechee Chamber, but also the Gullah Geechee Seafood Trail as well. So talk about hard work, dedication, passion. That's Marilyn, and that's some of the hard things that she's currently doing right now. So Marilyn, welcome.
Thank you.
Also, we have Christopher Harris as well. Christopher Harris is the executive director of the Unhyphenated America. And if I pronounce it wrong, I apologize.
That's correct.
Over 20 years of executive and IT experience in his role. He has amassed over a decade of institutional knowledge. So when it comes to get that knowledge base, when it comes to technology, some of the hard work that he's done, he is that person. Also, he has the ability to understand all levels of IT support, customer relation, and has over 300 federal employees and government contractors, while remaining the security and integrity of the White House. So we have a White House specialist here on the call as well. So Christopher, thank you so much for joining us as well.
Thank you.
All right. Also, we have the amazing Monica Pemberton. Monica Pemberton is the Vice President and Chief Information Officer at the American Council of Education, where she drives technology advancement and ensures secure system function. Before joining the ACE, which the acronyms for that, Monica served as the Chief Technology Officer at the National Association of College and University Business Officers and leading the pivotal technology initiatives. So another person that understands technology, another person that's just not just passionate about the growth, but someone that knows exactly what it comes to with the importance of technology into the current aspects of what we do right now. So Monica, thank you so much for joining us as well.
Thank you.
All right. And last but not least, we had Ron Busby, who's going to be here, but unfortunately could not join. So we were blessed to have Miss Elisa Joseph to blaze us with her presence. Miss Elisa Joseph has a proven record in leadership, strategic planning, grant writing, market communications, and program designing, strategies, and implementation. With over 25 years of experience in the financial service industry, she brings a wealth of knowledge in the financial products, including those providing access to capital, and yes, I said capital, into supply chain, diversity initiatives, multicultural marketing, and management. She has leveraged over years of expertise to help nonprofit business, stability, wealth, creating the ability to connect, leverage growth and conference, contracting opportunities, certification, operations, management, financing, communications, all across the board. Ms. Lisa Joseph, thank you so much for blessing us with your presence, and we truly appreciate that.
Thank you.
So, what I would love to do first and foremost before we get started is provide the ability for Eric Schmidt to give a couple words. And from there, we'll pass it over to myself where we'll get the question started and then we'll get this rolling. Eric Schmidt, over to you.
Thank you, Mervin, and good afternoon and good morning to those folks on other time zones. As Mervin said, I'm Eric Schmidt, CEO of Glue Up, and welcome to the Black Brilliance Unleashed Juneteenth webinar. Today, we gather to honor and reflect upon a very pivotal moment in American history, the emancipation of enslaved African Americans in the United States. Juneteenth commemorates the day when the news of emancipation reached the last enslaved people in Texas, marking a profound milestone towards freedom and justice. Throughout our time today, we're going to delve into the significance of Juneteenth, its historical context, and enduring reflection on society today. We'll explore its cultural impact, celebrate the resilience of the Black community, while adding in the impact of how technology has played within the African American community. I hope and encourage everybody to participate actively, ask questions, embrace the spirit of learning and solidarity that defines Juneteenth. Together, we'll honor this day and strive for a future where freedom and equality flourish for all. We thank each one of you for joining us. We thank our panelists for taking the time out of their afternoon. We know everybody is extremely busy during this time, and certainly with all the elections that are happening and taking place today, actually, here in Virginia and across other states, we know how people are extremely busy. So without that, I'm going to pass it back to Mervin. Look forward to an insightful discussion and look forward to continue supporting your organizations and other organizations around the globe. Thank you. And back to you, Mervin.
Thank you so much, Eric. So we're going to start off first with a question just to open things up here. And I think this is a good, like almost icebreaker for us, right? And the first question is, so Juneteenth has changed Black history in America regarding Black employees and business owners, right? So what I would love to do is just, before we even jump to that one, just give a timeline of the Black history and how we've gotten where we are so far. So, Chris, I would love for you to just provide us with just that understanding, kind of as an opener, and then we'll jump into the next question as well.
Okay, thank you. Well, Juneteenth really began with the understanding of when the emancipation of American Blacks, African Americans, whichever term you feel more comfortable using, was made aware. The people in Texas became aware of when Juneteenth, of when they were emancipated. Long story short, of course, Emancipation Proclamation was earlier that year, but we thank God we live in a world full of technology and airplanes and even cars because information travels fast. Well, the information took a lot longer to get to the enslaved people in Texas, and so when they became aware, when the Union General made them aware that, hey, you're free, that's when it was they recognized that. So Juneteenth really started out as a Texas thing. For people who were not from Texas, they were unaware of that being celebrated. But of course, over time, it's become more celebrated around the country. And more or less it's been looked at as like a second emancipation.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. I definitely do want to, I believe that pass it as well. Someone that has any aspect they want to add to that. I've seen Marilyn. I know that you have some deep roots when it comes to the understanding of Juneteenth and just what it's all about. Would you mind sharing just a little bit as well too?
Yes, thank you very much. Love what Chris said. I do want to add that for us along in the Gullah Geechee culture, we are direct descendants of Africans who were enslaved and kidnapped and brought to America. You find us from Wilmington, North Carolina to Jacksonville, Florida, roughly. with Chris saying it's about emancipation, that is so true. For us, it's January 1st, Emancipation Day, because if you've ever heard of a watch night service, our enslaved ancestors were actually waiting in the Bush Arbor churches, the churches, the praise houses for Emancipation Proclamation to become official at midnight. It has evolved into a religious service, but has in like my hometown of Georgetown, South Carolina, where we're headquartered, we actually found out February 25th, 1863, because as Chris indicated, back in those days, it was horse and buggy and horse and rider. That was the technology of the day when it comes to communication. Then 2 years later, it was June 19th, 1865, that Texas found out. So if you follow the thread of history, it is all connected, it's all emancipation. But so here at our hometown, we actually have the celebration starting January 1st through June 19th. And what connects us is not only the people, but technology actually connects us also, because we've been able to go on Facebook, social media, email, all of these different platforms and share the word. So I just wanted to add that. So thank you, Chris.
Thank you. But
Love
if
that.
I could add,
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry. If I could add, I mean, there's a couple of dates. It's. I wrote about this actually. It's pretty interesting. The question could be asked: when were Black people freed? We could say that hey, it was July 13th of 1787, when the Continental Congress actually wrote Article 6 of the Northwest Ordinance, that basically said there should be neither slavery nor involuntary servitude in said territories. Otherwise, that the punishment of crimes were basically was saying that you can't have slavery for any other reason or than punishment for an actual crime. Or we could have said, hey, maybe it was March 22nd of 1794, and that's when George Washington signed the Slave Trade Act of 1794, which is one of the first of the anti-slavery acts, right? But then, of course, to Maryland's point, January 1st of 1808 was when Thomas Jefferson passed the act prohibiting the importation of slaves. Or it could have been December 2nd of 1806 in his annual message to Congress, where he basically helped to congratulate people on the coming end of the slavery. So there was a lot of different days where we could talk about the emancipation of American Blacks. I mean, I know personally, like I said, my family roots, my father and I were just having this conversation, actually are in Virginia. I am the sixth generation of Black Harrises. My three times great grandfather was born on a plantation down in Charles City County, which is down in the Chesapeake Bay area. So here it is. I've ended up back in Virginia, where my three times great grandfather was born as a slave in 1813.
I would say welcome to Virginia. We definitely appreciate we definitely appreciate your presence and the Harrises here. So speaking of technology, Marilyn, you kind of hinted towards the next follow-up in the flow of the question there. This will go more so to Elisa. As we level ourselves as a Black community, what are some of the most intangibles or some of the intangibles that you've gained through technology to empower growth, advancement in your organization, especially working with the U.S. Black Chamber, right? The U.S. Black Chamber is super pivotal to not just the growth and development of chambers, but to the African American community, right? There's so much that the U.S. Black Chamber does from a small to a large level there. And with your experience and things that you've done, what would you say, or how can you share with us some of those tidbits?
Sure. Thank you, Mervyn. And again, on behalf of Ron Buzzy, who's our president, I'm happy to be here with you today. So I'm gonna, I guess, take it basically. And I'm going to do this post-COVID, because I think that's when we really talk about a huge turning point in our work in particular. Prior to that, we all met in person. We used social. We used things like LinkedIn and Facebook and, Twitter. And then the universe sort of expanded when we were shut down. And for us as an organization, this word I know is in everyone's lexicon, pivot. We all had to pivot to sort of understand kind of how we were going to reach our business owners. We serve business owners nationally. And so for us, it was, bringing on new technologies like Zoom, for instance. Even though we had Skype, we used Skype, but we didn't use Skype like we use Zoom, right? And so as you think about even disruption in this space, Zoom came in and suddenly Skype was almost non-existent anymore, right? As well as, WebEx and some others. And so we had to learn how to communicate in that way. We also had to spend a lot of time teaching our businesses how to go digital, because for the most part, because you couldn't go into a store, storefronts were closed. A lot of our businesses may have been working from home. And so now how do you reach your customers, right? And so we spent a lot of time working with our corporate partners and others in terms of teaching them digital tools, providing tips on digital marketing, really leveraging social media in terms of not only how we communicated, but how we were able to share learning opportunities, connection and networking opportunities, and the like. And so it was really important for us as we sort of grew in a way that we hadn't anticipated almost, because we were able to reach so many people nationally. We also had to support our chambers in this. Most of them are smaller run, as are we. And so at that point, when everything shut down, the one or two people or three people that you did have, suddenly you couldn't see them. You couldn't be in person with them anymore. And so a lot of technology, a lot of our technological advances have really come not so much in the tools, but in our adoption of those tools. There are a lot of things that existed, but we didn't have a need to use them because we could see each other face to face. I think COVID was really a turning point for us. And certainly as relates to really getting our businesses to drive more revenue, leverage other opportunities in spaces where digital marketing was key, getting your products online, getting a website. Most of our companies didn't even have websites at that time. So it was a true learning curve for our business community. And I will say, when I look at where we were in 2020 and I look at where we are now, probably at that time, maybe 20% of businesses really had a functioning website. Now I'm happy to say probably 80 to 85% do. And we still have those who are still stragglers, but it was important for us to move into that space. The other thing that it did for us was, and I think about our customer base, but also how we segment our customers, how we share specific information with some customers that because we know is of interest to them, how we sort of build a platform and a network through our communication channels. But it's also helping us improve our measurement, right? It's helping us understand and leverage our capabilities more effectively. The other thing we did during this time was we developed Buy Black. And buyblack.us is an online platform. It is our national onboard directory for Black businesses across the country, because we honestly got tired of hearing our corporate partners and others and federal agency partners and others say they couldn't find Black businesses. And so we created Buy Black in order to take that excuse away. We also created an online, really one of the first online certification programs from soup to nuts. So everything is done online. All of your documents are uploaded that way. We do a visual, walkthrough of your business online as well. And so all of those things I think have really helped to advance not only where we are at USBC, but also help our business owners as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm going to jump to you, Monica. And if at any point in time anyone wants to jump in, please do not hesitate. But I just want to kind of touch upon what Elisa kind of talked about. She talked about more so post-COVID, how technology was utilized, right? And you, Monica, you've been in technology space forever. CTO, CIO, COO, any OOs you've been. Right. So you have the knowledge and the like when you talk technology, that's your bread and butter. Right. After and post COVID, how did you see it in your space? Because you were with Nakubo, right? COVID was a huge setback for everyone. but how did you see that advancement working more so in your space? And how were you guys able to not just delve into that and run 2 toes down, 10 toes down, excuse me? How are you guys able to do and utilize that?
I think, excuse my voice, but I think post pandemic, because during the pandemic, it actually highlighted all of the disparities in technology, especially on the education side. So during the pandemic, trying to figure out how a student who doesn't have a computer or doesn't have Wi-Fi, how do they get access? And it also highlighted issues in capacity. So I know Fairfax County was one of those areas where they had capacity issues trying to get all the students onto a platform and trying to find the right platform. I also think that working in the associations, a lot of the associations just weren't ready. At Nakubo, with my leadership, we were already ahead of the game, and the transition was actually pretty easy. We were already in a hybrid environment, and ironically, the day that everything shut down was the day that we were going to test an office closure or a catastrophe happening. So we were already prepared. But to Elisa's point, that pivot, being able to work with providers like Dell and Microsoft, and making sure that everybody could get the licensing that they need. Skype, yes, no one talks about Skype anymore. And transitioning to Zoom, and Zoom even had capacity issues, and trying to get people on conference calls and being able to do video, especially. And bringing Wi-Fi in your home, and expanding the capacity of the Wi-Fi in your home so that you could do video calls. But I also think that it also Teams became the way for many organizations to communicate, and for higher ed and K through 12 to communicate. And I think that out of that also came a necessity to find different ways of communicating. So while you typically would not necessarily use your cell phone to communicate with a staff member, but that may have become the quickest way to communicate. I do recall during the pandemic building and setting up laptops in my home and shipping them out. So just being able to pivot and figure out a way, now what do I do? And then now transitioning back and trying to get staff members back into the office. How do we handle a hybrid environment while you still have remote individuals? How do you continue to provide support? But now you need to bring people back in the office and address the on-site support, which has been something that we have been struggling with. We have at the American Council of Education, 170 employees, about half of them have come back to the office. So now I need to have a help desk that's on site, but I also need to provide support for remote staff. So every day is a challenge.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Monica, because really is about embracing this future, right? And how technology has helped shape it and change it. And some of our old models that we have don't necessarily work as well, let me put it that way, as they used to. And I think it's also a mindset shift, right? It's our comfortability with being able to see people in person. And I think we're relying on that is more effective. I think as we start to look at what organizational psychologists are going to say down the line as to the future of work, it's going to be interesting to sort of see what that take is, remote versus hybrid versus in person, right? And so, but technology at the end of the day is still that connector across all of them, right? Because, everybody's still able to work regardless. We might not always be happy as to where they are, but at least everyone can work.
Correct. Well, actually, I think that's also the exciting part of it.
I do. I'm with you.
Technology is opening up so many opportunities, and I do agree with you. It's going to take a mind shift, a reset of our minds, and that's the part of the work that we're doing. We're running into that culturally. We want to retain our culture, Gullah Geechee culture, which is great, but part of our role as the Gullah Geechee Chamber is to marry the culture with the technology, and it has opened up so many opportunities, hybrid, in person, virtual, but now we also bring in artificial intelligence.
Right.
How do we incorporate that part of it? And something that Monica said that I'm going to also bring in, which we hear a lot about, but it is still a bit problematic, is access to broadband,
Yeah.
especially in rural areas. I mean, if you don't have it coming into your home, if you don't have it coming into your business consistently and in a
Yep.
sustainable manner, you're not thinking virtual because you're just thinking, if I turn it on, is it going to be there today?
That's
So,
right.
so that's also part of this journey. But what I find exciting about even this conversation is the opportunities that are just so available to us on a local scale, but also a global scale because of technology.
Well, to piggyback on what all the ladies are saying, one of my mentors has said that in every adversity, there's a seed of equal or greater opportunity for those who maintain a positive mental attitude, right? So, because we're also like in the money markets, they say, listen, regardless of whether the market's up or down, somebody's getting rich, right? So you have to kind of have the mindset of how do I maximize this? I'm a Miss Joseph, you're with the Chamber of Commerce. I'm a huge Booker T. Washington fan. Just went to his childhood home down in Roanoke a couple weeks ago. But he helped to found the National Negro Business League, which is fascinating. A lot of people are unaware of the fact that the National Negro Business League was founded in 1900, so basically 12 years before the U.S. Chamber of Commerce was founded. So that kind of tells you that from basically 35 years after emancipation, we as American Negroes, Black, whatever you want to say, had created enough of an economy to where we had the need for a use for a National Negro Business League that had over 50 chapters across the country. And the mindset of a Booker T. Washington, I have there's a ton of quotes from him, like one of them being that the world cares little about what a man knows, it cares about what a man is able to do. And the individual who can do something that the world wants done will in the end make his way regardless of his race. And so no man who continues to add something to the material, intellectual, and moral well-being of the place in which he lives is left long without proper reward. Speaking as someone who has a quarter century of experience in the IT sector, it's always kind of annoyed me that I don't see more people who share my ethnic image in the IT sector, because that's a place where if you have the skill set, the market will pay you. And I've even recently been at conferences for work where there'll be like somewhere in the neighborhood of 600 or 700 people at this conference, and less than 50 Black people are there. Now, it's not a matter of lack of color, because there's easily a third of the people who are there are people of color who happen to be like of Southeast Asian background, Indian, whatever. Like, I mean, it's amazing the number of Indian people that I see who have been working in the IT sector. And then even among the Black people that I see, like I said, if there's 50 people out of 600 who are Black, I'll tell you honestly, 25 of them are African. Like from the motherland, African, right? And so it's one of those things where, and I know there were some questions that we're going to get to later on, but there's opportunities, and where Ms. Pemberton has talked about with the Education Council, we need to be moving our kids in this direction, because this is where society, well, it's not even where it's going, it's where it is, right? And it's where it's going to continue to go. And so we have to prepare our children for the world that is and that's going to be continue to go. So if we want, and at the end of the day, listen, we're doing this because we want economic independence, right? So I have a background in the political world also, right? So, but at the bottom of education, the bottom of politics, even at the bottom of religion, Booker T. Washington said that there must be for our race economic independence. The road to economic independence is through technology. And so we need to embrace that. So I'm glad to have been invited to join this panel, and I hope that we're able to sow some seeds into more people, that they will say, hey, maybe I'll take my children into more. And just one other thing, Ms. Pemberton, you're talking about like with education, there's been a massive explosion in the number of Black people who are homeschooling their kids, and they're
Yes.
able to do it
Mhm.
because of technology. So people who have maybe some issues or concerns with the public education system, I mean, it's surprising to some people, but a number of people have decided to remove their kids because they're saying the education system is not serving or preparing my children to compete. And listen, that's the key word. You have to compete. There's a global marketplace. You're in it. Either you're going to move with it and compete with it, or you're going to be left behind.
I love it. So this leads to a question I do have here. How do we adjust the mindset of everyone to understand the importance of not just technology, but they understand the importance of that advancement, right? That word advancement was utilized in but the NAACP advancement. We talk about advancement, but it seems as though a lot of times we don't really want to advance, right? We find reasons to hold ourselves back, use the words of AI, right? Some people are afraid of AI. It's going to take my job. It's going to take that opportunity away from me. But if you really realize, if you utilize AI the right way, it's going to assist, not hurt. It's going to help, not harm, right? So how do we adjust that mindset of individuals to understand that advancing is okay with technology? And I'm going to push this over to Elisa. And then anyone else that feels free they want to answer as well. I would love to see what your thoughts are behind that.
Yeah, so I think that's a great question. I think we do have to get over our fear of some things, but I want to be able to say that you still can be cautious, right? There's still risk involved with what we're talking about. It is a new frontier, so just like with any new frontier, there are a lot of unknowns, right? It's like I was talking to somebody the other day. We were talking about phone books in the yellow pages. and you know, I always, as I look in the room and I could see like the glaze over a couple of younger entrepreneurs that were there, I was like, no, we used to have these things called, right? And so that's really what we're talking about, right? It's about moving to this next frontier. And a lot of, you know, traditionally, because we've not had access to capital, because we've not had access to networks, because we really have leaned on our culture and leaned on those who have come before us to really understand where we can move in the future and what we can do. We need to be thinking about not only business ownership, but also career development and management in a different way. Because these things are here to stay. And I would love to see us, you know, the biggest thing about what happened during the pandemic was we had all these disruptors. Podcast is a disruptor, right? It was here, but it is more of a disruptor than anything that we've seen before, right? And so I think it has to be the same thing when we're talking about expanding tools, whether that be new apps that get developed, or whether that be AI. What I'm concerned about with AI is, as we're thinking about this, we have to make sure that we're minimizing gaps. And I started with the access to capital piece because Black businesses in particular have been shut out of capital for a long, long time. We've had to self-fund. Some of us have been, once we've gotten large enough, have been able to gain capital. But those smaller years, those earlier years, we've been self-funding. It's been a barrier to entry, right? And so at USBC, we really developed some ways. We were leveraging lendistry.com to sort of get over that gap and be able to provide capital. But in the same vein, we have to look at AI in the same way, because that tool is going to make the difference as to whether or not someone can recognize us. So, you know, right now on your computer, and it asks you to look at your camera so it can recognize you. So we've got a level of safety. It is going to be the same thing with AI. And if we're not able to close that gap of them understanding who we are as a people, because we don't have as many developers as we should to be able to write the program, create the algorithms that recognize Black people as a cultural entity, we're going to have problems. And so, because it's going to be impacting everything, you're just like we're seeing those movies, you know, that show us futuristically, we are here. And so we've got to be able to kind of take that leap, work to understand what it is and how we can leverage it, and not work from a place of fear. How can I do how do I write my business plan using ChatGPT without me having to necessarily research everything, but how do I do it in a way where I'm not plagiarizing the
Yeah.
work? It's coming from my own ideas, right? Because that's really what the kicker is right now, right? We're really worried about how is it imitating us as opposed to us being able to use it in an effective way. And how do I have my employees leverage the use of AI in what they're doing on a day-to-day basis as a useful tool, as opposed to them being fearful that I'm going to replace their job after a while? Because at the end of the day, you still have to have people in this space. None of this gets created without people. And so we have to have people in those spaces, but we have to be willing to understand that we've got to take some leaps of faith, and we've got to understand how we get in the game and who we're going to be working with to understand what that looks like in order to be able to be part of the solution of this.
To jump off from what just Lisa just said, I thank my parents every day, and I thank God because they're in heaven with Him now. That my first computer class was in high school
Mm-hmm.
at the local technical college, and the biggest thing that it gave me was the lack of fear with computers, because with technology, at one point even ended up teaching computer classes. It's not my thing, but my experience and comfort level with computers allowed me to be hired with the late Bell South and learn their internal systems, and then turn around and teach those systems to managers, business and operations managers. But the root of everything I've done, even the Gullah Geechee Seafood Trail, is because my parents allowed me to take my first computer class in high school at a tech college, and it eliminates that fear. Do I keep up with all technology? No, but I do incorporate AI. Didn't even think twice about it. I saw it as a tool to be used and jumped in, and I'm using it. What I have found, and you are correct, this fear that prevents us, not just with technology, but in the work that I do as a chamber, is a lot of folks are held back by fear. And it's dealing with that to make them comfortable enough to, one, ask questions, whether it's technology, entrepreneurship, financing, but to overcome that fear. I, I I recognize it because of my individual journey, but we've got to figure out where that fear is coming from. And my thought with that is generational trauma is a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
And if we don't deal with that, first you have to become aware of it, then you have to address it. And that, in many ways, is what's holding us back. So, yes, technology, jumping in, we see opportunities, but we cannot be owners of that technological future if we don't overcome the trauma that is still with us. And I cannot answer that. I could tell my individual story, but part of it was awareness and making the decision to get on a healthier path.
So
And how
Marilyn,
do we do that in the community?
well, just to add on to what Marilyn was saying, you kind of triggered something in my mind. I'm eternally grateful to my parents. I mean, I'm blessed to have two great parents. My parents been married for 55 years, and just their foresight. And I don't even know if they realized, but like my sister and I, we both have careers in technology. My sister got her master's in computer information systems, right? And so, but my parents, back in 1982, my mom and dad bought an Osborne computer. I don't know if you ever heard of that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I look at it now, and the thing was like the size of carry-on luggage. It was huge,
Mm-hmm.
right? And my mom forced my sister took to it a lot more than I did. I had zero interest in that, right? She had to basically make me take typing classes. Once again, thank you, mom, for keeping a foot in my behind and making me do that, because here I've gone on to have, once again, over a quarter century. Gosh, now I'm thinking about it, coming up on 30 years. Dating myself, of having a career in the technology sector. But once again, I go back to a quote from my man Booker T. Washington, where he said, among a large class, there seems to be a dependence upon the government for every conceivable thing, and the members of this class have little ambition to create a position for themselves, but wanted the federal officials to create one for them. Well, we don't need that. Once again, we can look at the National Negro Business League. There was no government involved in that. And yet at a time when, I mean, obviously you're dealing with the legacy of slavery and with Jim Crow, yet we managed to build up our own network of businesses. And if we did it then, we can certainly do it now. And so I would say, Marilyn, to your point, uh, just telling people, first of all, it's possible. Nobody's going to tell you that it's easy, right? Anything worthwhile takes effort and there's struggle, but it's available to you, and we have to take advantage. Like no one's going to hand us anything. We have to go out there and compete in the marketplace, and just be thankful that these tools were created. That the tools themselves don't care about the ethnicity, the melanin content in anyone's skin. You can maximize that. And once again, working in the technology sector for almost 30 years now, I see a whole lot of people who come from foreign countries who, they didn't really have access to computers until much later on in life, but yet and I'll throw out a stat for you. There's a reason why the median household income, the ethnic group that has the highest median household income in the United States is Indians. Well, there's a couple of things. When they come here, they're on H-1B visas, most of them. And I don't know if you guys know the numbers on that, but the law says that when you bring someone on an H-1B visa, you have to pay them a minimum of it's either $61,000 or $62,000. Well, you take and over 80% of households in Indians in America are like, something like 82% are married couple households. Both of them typically working in the IT sector. So you got 61 and 61, you're at $122,000 household income. There you have it. So some of the simple solutions, once again, I had two-parent privilege. I'm thankful to my parents. Reconstituting the family, right? Because kids are more likely to have that stable environment where then you can, instead of focusing on mere survival, you can actually move them forward. You can look for progress when you have a stable environment. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, but I do want us to be careful because, the legacy of slavery has brought us Jim Crow that lasted 50, 70 years. The need for amendments to give us the right to vote, to, almost give us the right to assembly to some degree, right? And so I think we have to be careful when we talk about what I like about technology is I think it gives us advantages in a way that we hadn't traditionally had. Because we have all of our younger people are natives to technology. We're adopters. They are natives. And so I think what we have to do is figure out how to take the native side of that and create something that they're able to own, they're able to build wealth with, they're able to do a lot with. And again, my fear is, at the end of the day, we still have, AI systems not recognizing us. And so if anyone gets stopped and they use, a camera or some form of AI, you could we still have to worry about, being accused of things that we have nothing to do with. Right. And so that's where I feel if we're going to be thinking about how do we make it better if, we have a women's center in Greenwood, Tulsa, home of Black Wall Street. There have been a number of Black Wall Streets across the country, Durham, in Florida and other places. So we all have always had the capability to do what we needed to do, for ourselves. But it's also, we have to understand that there are things that exist that do stop us from those things. And we have to figure out how do we leverage technology to be, for me, it's about decreasing those gaps. We still have gaps that we have not been able to overcome, because when you talk about HB1 visas, someone can come in and make that much money, and we've got kids going through our school system who can't make that amount of money, right? So we still have to think about the inequalities that exist. But I think leveraging technology, leveraging tools like AI, helping teach our students how to be able to leverage that to move forward, I think can be a real game changer for us. I'd love your thoughts, Monica, on that.
I think it's interesting that in our school systems, they don't even encourage entrepreneurial mindset. I'm really dating myself. When I came to school, I was a nerdy girl. I had what I wanted for Christmas was a calculator. My dad was just a natural genius, a blue collar worker.
Yeah.
And came to college. I had a Smith Corona typewriter.
So
And
did I.
I thought
I had an electric one when I went to school. Yes, I did too.
but once I got to school, my roommate was like, they have a brand new computer lab, and I was like, what is that? But I had to have some vulnerability to learn and willingness to learn something new because I just didn't understand the whole concept and still used my, typewriter for the first year. And it's just ironic that I end up in technology. And then just seeing the differences between my sons. They're 5 years apart. One went to a Catholic school that didn't necessarily have all of the technology, and he learned to type like this. And then his brother had access to computers in kindergarten, and he's like a whiz at the computer. And just seeing the differences, like him little going up to a microwave and trying to swipe. He didn't get the concept of trying to, why are we pushing buttons? And just watching technology continue to evolve, but individuals like ourselves also willing to learn new skills, do some training and be visible to mentor those incoming students or young adults and trying to give them some guidance because they don't know what they don't know, especially if they're in a socioeconomic environment where they're going to be a first gen or college. It may not necessarily be an option. Maybe it's a trade school or maybe it's an apprenticeship, just giving them options that they can eventually have some economic stability and eventually get in this position where now they've broken some generational curses, I call them, and can forge ahead and now start, the next generation helping that generation, and kind of have a domino effect.
Yep.
I want to add something, Monica. Thank you. The segue from where you just stopped and bring this back full circle quickly to Juneteenth and emancipation.
Yeah.
80% of African Americans trace their roots back to the Gullah Geechee, in particular South Carolina and Georgia. What many people don't know is our ancestors were kidnapped because of their knowledge of how to control water and manage the land to grow rice. It was rice before cotton and tobacco. Rice, indigo, sugarcane, and sea island cotton. And you had to know the technology. That's why when we think about the peculiar institution of slavery, we think physical. We were brought because of our brute labor and also our ability to bear the next generation, right? It was technology. We were owners of the technology to grow the rice. And once you understand that, what you just said about bringing it forward to the next generation, I'm paraphrasing, previous generations have brought that to us, but we've disconnected from it the knowledge that we were the engineers, we were the builders, we were the technologists. The difference is the technology has changed, but not the mind power. We still have it. And that's one reason history is being attacked. Education is being attacked because if you have that knowledge that our ancestors built this, literally made the hand tools, made the hands, and built this technology that made millions for people in the 17 and 1800s. Imagine what you can do in 2024 with artificial intelligence, with virtual, whatever we want to call it, Zoom, Skype, all of those. Imagine what we could do if we just simply own the future.
Yep.
Love it.
That's it. That's all I mean, So how do we get that to our young people? We've got to teach them our history and connect it to the technology.
Absolutely.
And I have a young man who's a member of our chamber now, who's literally taking our folk tales, working with an illustrator in Brazil over technology he writes the stories, and the person in Brazil creates the illustrations, all technology based. All technology based. He's got it. I love being around him because he gets it. right? He's about to take off. So now you're marrying economics,
Mhm.
Right.
And moving
entrepreneurship, and wealth building.
and moving beyond your own neighborhood. Like what I love about that story is we're
Yes.
talking globally.
Mhm.
That is the difference that technology gives us, is that we can make these global connections in a way that we could not have before.
Yep.
And I think that from a business owner's perspective, and when we start talking about, exporting or importing, or just trying to expand our businesses, we don't have to necessarily think about just the US. We can think beyond that. And that to me is what's exciting about what the next generation of wealth could look like.
It's interesting that you're saying this. Is technology truly has no language, right? Even money has language, right? You go to different countries, they have rubies, they have euros, they have this, but technology truly has no language. If you know technology here in the US, you can go over to the Philippines, and if you know technology, you can utilize that. The instructions may be different, right? But if you have the skill and the mindset, you can still utilize those same abilities to do that. So I love the fact that you guys are bringing this up. And even at the question that I asked in regards to how do we change the mindset, right? Because talking with younger individuals as well, too, just to go off what Monica talked about with entrepreneur classes, technology courses and classes into college is not something that you see a lot of African Americans in that class at all. It's not something where if I walk into a classroom right now and it has anything to do with IT, you're going to see a lot of people like you guys in there, right? Because Chris, you and Monica took a risk. I guarantee when you guys
Mhm.
joined those courses, those classes, you were literally the only person there, one of the only or the only person there, right? So when I talk about taking risks, when I talk about taking that leap, when I talk about just making it happen, you guys did that, right? And Elisa, every single day you're taking a risk with not just working with chamber, but individuals, business owners, because you stand on the forefront and they hear your voice loud and proud, right? And Maryland as well with the Gullah Geechee Chamber. That's a serious chamber that has a lot of roots behind that. So you all are constantly taking risks, constantly dedicating yourselves, and constantly elevating just the community, the African American community there. So I want to say thank you in advance to that, because that's something you should truly be proud of.
And just to remind you, unfortunately, I'm enjoying the conversation, but I actually have a hard stop because I have a 2 o'clock meeting I have to go and join. But ladies, and Mervin, once again, I appreciate the invitation and I appreciate the conversation. I hope whoever's the people who are listening, I hope you're getting some value from this.
Absolutely. Chris, we definitely appreciate that. And then before you leave, Chris, any final words you want to end off with, and we'll continue the rest of the conversation.
Well, the final words is that technology is the future and embrace it or be left behind. And like I said, there's going to be challenges. It's not going to be easy, but it'll be worthwhile.
Thank you so much, guys. That's Christopher Harris there. Thank you so much for your presence. We truly appreciate that very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chris.
Bye, Chris.
All right, so now we're left with the queens. All right, so in regards to my next question, just to constantly segue, but I love where we're at here. My question is more in regards to leadership, right? Because every single person here is a leader. How do we get the mindset of our younger individuals to believe and understand that you too can lead, whether it's in the technology world, whether it's in the general assisting others world? How do we get that going, right? Because if we truly understand there's plight out there, but we got to move forward. How do we get people in that mindset? And even more to add that, how do we get the young ladies to also understand that it can and it is possible as well?
Who wants to start?
I'll jump in for a minute, and you all can help me with this. And I'm thinking about our younger entrepreneurs in the space. USBC is having its national conference in July 17th through the 19th, and we're focused on innovation, and we're focused on technology and capital, specifically because it is the future, and we have to begin to embrace it as business owners in order to be able to do business, whether it's with any government agency, whether it's with any corporate supplier, whether it's between each other. Whether it's globally, we are going to have to embrace what comes with that. And also the thought that you can lessen your workload, right? Part of this is also about how do you leverage efficiencies with the use of technology. I think as I'm thinking about younger people in particular, Monica was talking about, how she used her typewriter, and I had the same, experience. And while I'm the first to say I'm not a techie, I've never been afraid to at least try my hand at it, right? I am not a technician of it, but I understand what it is that I have to do, and I understand how it works for something else, right? In the end of the day, it's I got to go get someone else to actually implement it for me, but I understand what it is that I need. And I think that's where our young people have a real advantage, is because you are practitioners of the technology. While you're going through school, I know a lot of times it's always about, we always engage technology specifically with math. And I'm not saying that math has nothing to do with it, but if you're able to figure out something on your phone, and you didn't use a math equation to do it, then I think that you can get past whatever that fear is. So some of those things you can be taught, but and Marilyn, I think you said it best. What's inside of us in terms of creativity, inspiration, our diligence, our persistence, all of those factors make a huge difference in you being able to take yourself over that plateau into the next future. And so I think it's about, again, we've talked about being fearless in this, but it's also about not equating certain things with other things. One thing doesn't make the difference of you being able to do that. And I think that's where technology has really helped us.
I'm going to segue. I think another thing is exposure, because what I'm finding in my work with Blacks in technology is there are a lot more Black professionals than I realized. And if they're entry level or mid-level management, they are not getting any exposure. They're not the ones that are selected to go to conferences. They're the ones that are not selected to do any kind of travel. So it's kind of like individuals like us trying to help highlight those individuals and the amazing, amazing work that they're doing that we don't even realize is going on, and giving them some exposure. And I think it's also working with them, because some of them, technology does have one downside, and it can be in the face-to-face communication. So working on the networking and working on just face-to-face communication. And I was guilty of that. And how I was able to become a leader and propel my career is I had to step out of my comfort zone and have those in-person conversations, maybe do a panel like this, or go through some training, or become a mentor. Because I think when you become a mentor for students and they see you in these roles and see what's possible, it's a way to not dim their light, because they are constantly having battles, which we already deal with. I feel like I wear armor every day and it's just getting dinged up, but we just forge ahead because that's part of the job and it's just how we're built. But some of the younger generation, we got to help toughen them up, and listen to what they're saying. We actually open our ears and listen to what they're saying, because I think there's just talent that we don't even realize that's there, and ideas. If you think about innovation and ideation, ideas that they're bringing forward that are just getting like, go away, little kid. That could be the next $1 million idea, so.
Whew, this is actually a heavier question, Mervin. I don't know if you realized it, but I do want to say this very quickly. Most of my entrepreneurs are women, young women. So
I'm finding that too.
yeah,
Yep.
I think we were told go forth and get educated and do certain things, and we took that seriously and we did it as women. Um, I just launched a solar panel workforce development course yesterday,
Awesome.
and it's mostly men. And it's literally putting the things together. It's a basic
Mhm.
solar panel and electric vehicle charging stations to snapping that together. It's mostly men. I think men, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but in some ways have fallen behind. But we're starting to make the turn, and the turn for men, I think, is going to be in green renewable energy and the opportunities that technology provides them, because it does go back to hands. I mean,
Mhm.
there's thousands of jobs they're trying to fill, literally putting hands on. I think that's going to, we're going to look back 10 years from now and see how did that happen? And I think the roots are starting now with green renewable energy, literally putting things together. But on the entrepreneurship side, I actually see more young women going
Mhm.
on that side of it. So to answer your broader questions, I think what we need to do, exposure, but more importantly, storytelling.
Mhm.
We have got to start telling our stories, the personal stories, but our historical stories, the community stories, to get to these young people, to not only say, here's the technology, go forth, run with it, grab it, learn it, but the stories that connect them to who they are. Elisa, you told it, that internal part of it,
Mhm.
it comes down to storytelling, sharing those stories. Even this conversation today is literally us telling stories, right?
Mhm.
And I think but the key is in telling that story is, how do we tell it on a broader scale? Because we could
Right.
go into a whole bunch of other conversations that I have every day with folks, what's happening in this world. Not
Yes.
going to go there, but I think we all know we're at an inflection point globally, right? We don't want to be left behind. We want to own what's going to be on the other side of that inflection point. And to do that, we have to tell the stories that connect the technology with the internal, with our history, our heritage. So it does come down to this storytelling. But the key, I think, with technology, it gives us a broader tool, a tool that allows us to reach a broader audience with those stories, because I think we're also in some ways running out of time if we don't get in front of what's happening globally.
Mhm.
Right.
I love that. So my thought process is this, and I'm going to step into the young mindset really quick, like really young mindset, right? Because as a young person, we talk about the exposure. We talk about hearing. Not even they're not just telling the story. You got to listen to the story, right? As you know, a lot of younger individuals, their attention span is very short, right? Because you'll tell the story, but I got 10 seconds. I ain't got time. So you're the problem I think that we fall into is young individuals, they want things instantaneously. So it's like, okay, get to the point with your story. How do we get that exposure piece out there with wise individuals like you guys telling the story, right? Because what you're saying right now, it's important to be heard. But maybe you're not the most flashiest, you're not a rapper, you're not a singer. So now the story's not heard. What are other ways? I got the idea and I know what is, but I want to hear from your perspective. What are other ways to expose to get that story told?
I do want to be clear. It's not just young people who have this problem.
Oh, you're absolutely right.
In terms of not of not either retaining or give it to me quick. But I think we have to recognize that, right? I mean, those of us who know remember 12 channels on a television.
Hmm.
I have almost 12 subscriptions now, streaming subscriptions. Okay. So you all know what I'm doing on the weekend. Okay. So we have to be thinking about it's really about competing with all of these other things. It's not as easy as what's the one or two things that we have to do. It really is about understanding everything else that you're competing with
Right.
out there in the world right now, that where you can hold someone's attention, even if it's for, 30 minutes, right? And I'm just sort of a firm believer of give the answers to the test. My team will tell you that as my mantra, just give the answers to the test. Like, some folks just don't need to work through it. We just need to say, here's what it is. Please take this. The other things that you need to work through that. But some stuff we can make easy. And I think sometimes we're in this space of, and I mean, I know for me, I'm going to speak for myself. where it is always about proving yourself, right? You proved yourself, in school, you proved yourself to your parents, you proved like all through your career, right? At some point, we have to just, I think Monica, both Monica and Marilyn were talking about this, where we have to give them guidance, but we have to give them freedom and some benefit of the doubt, right? We can guide because there are still some practical applications, whether it be infrastructure, whatever that might be, where you can cement your foundation. But because we're competing with so many other interests, we have to also be able to attack it from a perspective of what is really the key component that this thing of I always wanted to know but never had time to find out kind of thing. Like if we can get to some of those things, then I think it's easier to kind of for folks to kind of take the next step, right? But when we talk about technology, it's about utilizing all of it. It's we're going to tell our story and we're going to share, who we are and be able to be those models, or at least be able to show an example. People have to see themselves in someone else. And so if we're able to do that, we got to use every single form, social, network TV, streaming services, music, podcasts, whatever it is, short film, our phones, sending messages. We have to use all of that in order to communicate. It's not going to be one thing that's the given that's going to break through. It really is about how do we effectively get folks to listen to this message and then hopefully be able to listen to the next.
What I think is a good example of what you're just saying, and it's not the technology as much. It is technology, but I don't think people really are thinking about it in that terms. But how do we make it sexy? And
right.
you know what's sexy now?
Right.
The WNBA
is sexy right now. Yes.
But going back to what you were saying, it took multiple avenues to make it sexy.
That's right.
Let's be real. First, it took years to bring the WNBA to a certain point. Right. But then you got the Dawn Staley story with 3 championships and no loss season, won everything, won the championship. You got Caitlin Clark, because you got to have a villain. Unfortunately,
you gotta have a villain and you gotta have a standout.
You gotta have a villain stand out. Somebody, because she gonna have her fans and the non-fans and all of that. Those are different avenues that build the story. But those avenues were actually playing out on technology. Streaming, TV, live, buying the tickets online to go see the games. The tools were the technologies to bring it together. But what's sexy now? The WNBA. So how do we... And some people were actually very conscious of it. People have been WNBA fans since the beginning of WNBA because they like women's basketball. Some have been fans because they like sports. So any way they could get some sports, let me go see the women. So they've been there all along. And let's be honest, most people who are making it sexy now are the overnight fans. Who just like
they haven't been there for the struggle.
Exactly.
They've been there the past 6 months.
Exactly. And and guess how they got there? Social media, technology, streaming, wherever, the smartphone. And come on, when they were going down that championship road, everybody was on that smartphones. Y'all, I got a full confession. I'm a USC alumni. Go Cox. So I'm literally in a restaurant on my smartphone, TV, smartphone, watching the play-by-play, watching the fans all over the world while the championship is being played, and yelling when it's over, right? All these different streams of technology, the story coming together has made the WNBA hot, and that sexy story. So the question is, and I hate saying sexy,
but it is, Maryland, it is what is hot.
It is what is hot,
right?
Yeah. So how do we make it hot for our young Black women and Black males?
Yeah.
And that they realize that they can make good money from technology. That will help a lot when they realize, what? I can make this kind of money in technology, and I could learn it at home. That's it. How do we make it sexy?
I'll tell you this: if you show something enough, you say it enough, they hear it enough, they see it enough, it then becomes sexy, right? Think of a song. There's songs out there. Let me go with music. There's music out there that don't sound like nothing, right? I've heard songs. I said I don't like that song, but I heard it so many times, and I
Just to
find
catch
myself singing it. I said,
Mhm.
man,
Right,
I
right. And
kinda
then you
like
love the song.
and then you love the song out of nowhere. That's what I
It's in your
think.
head.
Just totally if they see if they see it enough, right? Right now, Sports Center, WNBA. You go on TikTok, WNBA, Instagram, WNBA. What WNBA is everywhere. Like you said,
Mm-hmm.
they've exposed it so much. It's not the fact that it wasn't everywhere, it's just it wasn't exposed, right?
Right.
Nothing changed. Cheryl Super played, Cynthia Cooper played. They were actually more skilled.
All our heroes, all our sheroes, yes.
Some of them
yes.
were more skilled than the current people
Mhm.
playing right now.
Mhm.
But it just wasn't, it needed consistency, more time, and it just needs to be exposed with the technology. So
But I think what Mervin was interesting to what you're saying when we talk about the WNBA in particular, and I want us to just think about taking things to the next level.
Yeah.
So there are times where we have structure around stuff. So we've had we've had that structure. We've had people doing the WNBA isn't taking off. It is individual people in their stories
Exactly.
that are forming this narrative, right? The WNBA to some degree is not even capitalizing on some of the things they could be capitalizing on.
True.
Okay.
That's true.
So, and that's,
True.
and I bring that full circle for us to think about. There are times where we're not always capitalizing on the thing that is hot and that's out there, right? Somebody else might be, but we haven't figured out how to tie to that or how to take that next step that moves us that way. And I think that's some of what we're talking about here is how do you take that next step? What does that, look like?
And also not only take the next step, how do you replicate it and scale it?
Yes, and scale it is important. Yes.
And that's where I see individuals like yourselves, right? Because individuals like yourselves that's taking that risk, that is actually doing it, right? You're not just a buzzword, right? Because the buzzword is, yeah, you can make it, you can do it, but then you never meet the individuals that has done it, that has experienced it.
Mhm.
But seeing individuals like yourself that's speaking on this webinar, right, that has experienced, you talking about, Monica, the fact that you had a typewriter in the past. You know how many other people have that experience? A lot of people. My parents had a typewriter as well, and I would slap onto it. I didn't need to, but they had it. So I felt your story. I felt the whole thing there. So I just think that a lot of us, it's so important that the story is not just told, it's heard, and it's read. Nowadays, people don't even read no more. So they watch. So we got to find different ways of getting in front of individuals. And that's where I think about this moment here, because this is a moment. It's not just a story, it's a moment. All right. So I want to ask another question as well, too. And I know we have 10 minutes left here. This has been an amazing conversation. It's not even a conversation. This is just us talking. It's just us chatting here. One of my questions that I do have there is more so within the STEM field, right? And I know this is more so Monica's field here and Marilyn as well, because, you're getting green with it. How do you envision the future of Black representation in technology and other STEM fields?
Do you mean like in careers or just technology in general?
I think in careers more so, because we talked about the fear of the unknown, right? And
Right.
we talked about making it sexy, right? Because I think one of the biggest issues as well is because there's no famous technology person that someone can relate to, right? Just like we like to relate to somebody. We're going to relate to a rapper. We got the rapper we relate to. We're going to relate to the singer. We relate to the singer. But there's no quote unquote. It's not, as we say, sexy. But how do you envision that future? Do we need someone to make it, as you said, or Marilyn said, sexy, or what do you see?
What I am seeing already is it just depends on the technology area. There are influencers. So you'll have influencers in Salesforce. You'll have influencers in ServiceNow. And I'm also seeing an increase exposure and highlighting technology sales. There are a lot of individuals who don't even think of that as a career. It's a very lucrative career that if you're a natural communicator, that technology sales is an opportunity for you as well. So I think it's also just continuing to talk about it, continuing to interact. And I I try to just have more exposure in the K through 12 because that's where it starts. Because you will have those students that they're not going to have that support at home. So who can they have as a mentor? Who can they talk to know what their options are? I mean, shockingly, there are still kids that don't have cell phones. So there's that part.
Yeah.
So we still got to work on the equity piece. We still have to work on, so that's why I do a lot of these, panels talking about it, a lot of volunteering, and it does take up your time, but it's all worth it in the end. So.
Gosh. So let me start with the Gullah Geechee Seafood Trail as an example. That's a tourism destination website. If you want to come visit our Gullah Geechee community, you can go to that website and find the restaurants, the small businesses with experiences, and etc. What we found in pulling that together, many of those small businesses are not consistent with social media websites.
Right.
And one of the reasons is they don't have someone that's dedicated to pulling that together for them. From my point of view, as chamber president, that is such an opportunity for someone to learn how to create websites and bring in the social media piece. That is actually a small business. I cannot find people who get that. They have the influencer, as Monica, they could be influencers, maybe locally have a little channel, but they're not making that leap to, it's not just my channel I can be promoting. I could be promoting 10 other small businesses through social media and doing their websites and make a pretty darn good living from it.
So I will tell you, there are companies up here that do that.
Well, they need to reach out to me, but I'm talking like, my area, like right here. But they need to reach out.
We need to talk, Marilyn.
Let's talk.
Yeah.
But it's a very real thing, and I guess because I'm in a rural ocean area, we're kind of contradictory, but it is fast growing area. But our community, I see so many opportunities, and I'm trying to figure out how do we make that connection to make it sexy, where it's not just the sexy part is I'm an influencer. I'm on my little channel. I'm doing my thing. But to me, it's even sexier where I am doing it for 10 other businesses or whatever, websites too. Now I'm really big. I may not have my face out there, but behind the scenes, I'm running some real stuff, right? For me, from the point of view of the Gullah Geechee Chamber of Commerce, the future is we've got to figure out how do we close that gap with our young folks, where they're not just influencers in front of the camera, they're the influencers behind the camera, and you're controlling a bigger universe that people may not necessarily see, but you're out there making real impact.
Yeah, those roles are very important. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to build on that too. Because it's work that we do at the U.S. Black Chambers. So we created by Black because it is sexy, because it provides this ability in this network that exists. I think sometimes, I just had a conversation the other day with some women owned businesses. We still are in a space of doing everything ourselves. So to your point, Marilyn, we don't think about that next thing because we're so geared on, I got to get it all done by me, right? And where we really need to be, and where our culture, the culture that came before us was that it's about community, right? It's about us leveraging one another. And so we have to begin to, I think, reach out more and not always feel like we've got to do everything ourselves. There are plenty of businesses that are willing to help other businesses get there. We just have to begin to figure out how we really bridge that gap more effectively, because we, as a people, we are a giving people. We are a philanthropic people.
Mhm.
Whenever I talk to a business owner, they're talking about their business, but then they're also talking about how to give it back to the community. And there's times where I have to say, I need you to put this down right now because I need you to worry about how you're going to make some money, right? And so we already have that within us. We already have that in our spirit. We haven't figured out how yet to lean on one another, right? And to find ways of, again, I don't have to have all the expertise here. Let me go find X, Y, and Z, and maybe they can help me do this part of it, right? And I can do the thing that I do best. That's to me, that's what that closing of the gap is, and why we kind of created By Black to be that tool for folks to use, an online tool for them to be able to go search. And if I need X, Y, and Z, I can go find it. But we also have to build bridges among each other, to be able, to your point, to do exactly what you're talking about, which is I can now make more money doing X, Y, and Z as opposed to me just doing it alone. I can, and in the process, still help. To your point, 10 other people.
I want Monica to answer, because I do have two thoughts. But Monica, do you have anything to share that you might even have my thought? Any thoughts?
Really quick.
No, the only thing I was thinking.
Real quick, we have 2 minutes left.
Okay. Okay. Just real quick, I think part of that is trust. We don't necessarily.
Trust is a huge part of it. Yes, it is a huge part. And we just like we talked about fear.
Yep.
We have a right to be distrustful about a lot of things.
Exactly.
Like that, it's not some fabrication or something that's in our mind. That is something that has happened to us to make us both fearful in some instances as well as distrustful. And so we just got to figure out how to overcome those, how to take those steps to overcome some of that work.
Two things. I do agree with the trust part and overcome, but also developing a mindset of being a job creator. Because when I'm paying you to do something for me, I am actually creating a job.
That's right.
And that's a change in mindset. And Mervyn, you're going to answer, I'm going to end this with this and bring it full circle. That is one of the reasons I'm working with Glue Up. I had to release that. I wanted to automate the membership drive we're getting ready to do, that whole thing, because releasing it, as you said, Lisa, that actually helps grow the chamber.
Yeah.
You know, and I knew it, and I'm like, okay, I got to find that vehicle to automate. To bring the technology.
And it also brings you new opportunities, right?
Exactly.
So if I'm able to help somebody understand how they're going to make their ROI because they contributed to us, I now have numbers that support those things, because we still are a data-driven society, right? Those who don't look like us are data-driven. So we have to also work toward, understanding what are people's drivers to be able to get us what we want. And so Glue Up has been a factor for us, as you were saying, and us being able to, our reporting is better. We're able to understand, our registrations, our attendees. We're able to segment. We're able to say, okay, if you want to get XYZ number, here's kind of the group that we think we're. So it helps in a lot of different ways for us to do that. But we had to, again, get to that place of investment. Sometimes we don't want to always invest